All right, so we're going to jump into it. So today we're going to be talking about the introduction to real estate selling, so the basics of real estate selling and the importance of effective marketing. And so as we go through this today, know that we will open it up for some questions at the end. You're also welcome to jump into the chat box if you want to stop us at any point in time and to ask any of those questions as we kind of go through. So the first thing that we want to touch on as we go into this is just some wise words from our founder, Gary Keller. People do not decide their futures, they decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures. This is by Gary Keller. And really what he's talking about here is, getting into the habits of lead generation and what you're doing are going to be wildly important, as well as be very good for you throughout this selling process as we go through. I know some of you that I'm seeing in, but for some of you I don't know, my name is Andre. I am the operating partner at Keller Williams Innovation. I'm also the founder of Compass Real Estate Advisors and powered by Icon, our expansion platform that's across Ontario. I've been in the business for 15 years. I just got the notification that I'm 15 years in the industry, serving that now. And I've been a team owner for about the last decade. In that time, we've managed to come from a brand new team to now one of the top 20 teams in Canada. I'm also part of Gary Keller's top 200 masterminds, so top 200 team owners out of 200,000 agents. So taking a lot of time, a lot of stuff I'm going to share with you is where I started and some of the stuff that I was thinking about as we went through it. So understanding the real estate selling and what that looks like. So I'm going to start with the first point here, which is the nature of the real estate industry and market trends. Now, we always say you have to be the economist of choice. You have to ensure that your clients are hearing from you, but you probably don't know what that means or who you're going to be communicating with. And so one of the things I want you to think about is how well do you know your statistics? How well are you following the information that you're given? And are you doing your job as a realtor? You have a fiduciary duty to be knowledgeable in your industry. And so looking at the real estate industry, we know that the real estate industry is cyclical. That's the first thing you have to know. The market is ever shifting. It's never just in one place. It's never going to be acting the same way at all times. It's going to always be shifting. It's either shifting up or shifting down. And so for those of you that have been in the market for a year or less, you've been a part of the downward shift, which is what we're in right now. It's where the market went from being a predominantly seller's market into a balanced market, and we saw the start of a buyer's market. Now, that is important to know because the trends are going to be different through that. So a buyer's market means that the buyer holds the power. Means that there are more listings than there are buyers. It means there's opportunity to negotiate. It's opportunity to write contracts a little bit differently, to have conditions into those contracts, et cetera, et cetera. Then you're going to get into what's called a balanced market. And where that is, probably where we are right now, one of the key indicators to know whether you're in a balanced market is looking at the inventory amounts that are currently in the market. Now, we get this report every month. If you're a member of the Waterloo Region Real Estate Association, you get that information on a monthly basis where it tells us what the absorption rate is for the current listings that are active. Now, the last time we looked, it was sitting at about 2 months worth of inventory, which puts us into that balanced market. Now, what that means is if nothing else were to get listed over the next 2 months and we had to sell everything that was there, that's how long it would take to get through all those sales. It would take about 2 months at the current rate at which things are selling. Now, when we get into a seller's market, it means that there is less than 30 days worth of inventory. Now, that number could stretch a little bit, and in Canada, that number does vary a little bit as well. So you do have a little room on either side of that, where that balanced market might actually be 2 to 3 months worth of inventory. But those are the three predominant natures of the real estate industry. And it's just important to know that and to know those trends. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to look at when it comes to trends, we're hearing a lot right now. You're seeing people say things like, oh, the Toronto real estate market is coming back in full force. Now, what they're indicating, or what they're using to indicate that, is they're going to turn around and say, well, are we seeing multiple offers? That's one of the things that is wildly important to letting us know if we're in an upshift or a downshift. So how many buyers are showing up to the table when it's time to make an offer? The second thing that's important about that, when we talk about that, is going to be the days on market. So what's the number of days in which it's taking to sell a home? Now, in the worst parts of the buyer's market slash balance market that we just went through, we saw those days on market go up to 26, 27 days on market at the high point. Now, again, that's an average. It was higher for a lot of other properties. It was lower for some properties. And that's going to depend on where the buyers are falling and where the affordability trends are going to be as well. But knowing that information, as we start to see days on market trend down, which I believe now it's coming in at around the 21 days on market, and we could see that fall into the 18, 17 days on market as well over the next couple of months. What that's telling us is that properties are selling faster on average. It means that there are more buyers in the market than there are sellers. And so there's creating that competitive nature within the real estate industry right now. So these are two of those trends that you're going to be looking for. But then statistically, you need to understand how to read the information that you're given. So as an example, we know that year over year, transactions for the month of January in Kitchener-Waterloo specifically are up 40%. Now you're looking at that stat and you're going, that's a pretty big jump. How is that possible in the month of January? And so if you dig a little deeper, you'll be able to realize that in 2022, we had a normal January. And in fact, that was probably a little higher in the number of sales that happened. And then in 2023, when interest rates changed, we saw those sales go down. And now that interest rates have held, we're seeing those number of sales come back up. And so statistically, it looks like, oh my God, we sold 40% more houses in the month of January. And really what has happened is we've gotten back to a normal selling month. So we're not quite back into the crazy that was happening before. Now, when we talk about the roles and responsibility of the real estate agent, the very first thing that you have is your fiduciary duty. Now, Rico does a really good job of explaining this, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's understanding that you have a role as a realtor to satisfy your client legally once you've gotten into agreement with them. And that's called your fiduciary duty. But you do have other roles and responsibilities within that as well. Now, some of you may be buyer agents if you're on a team, and that means that you're going to primarily focus on working with buyers. And a buyer agent's role, they're going to be focused on showing houses, negotiating those contracts, giving advice to the buyer on what the industry trends are happening right now, are prices going up, where are rates at, et cetera, et cetera. You're also going to be thinking of things like conditions. Am I looking at an inspection condition because this home warrants an inspection? Is my client's financing a little shaky, and maybe I want to put a financing condition in there in order to ensure that they can secure the home without any issues. So these are all things that you want to make sure that you are thinking about as you go through this process. And then the flip side of that is you might be a seller's agent. And again, you're going to have different roles and responsibilities. Now you've got to market the home, and we're going to talk about that a little later today. But now you've got to market that home. You may have to stage that home, and we're going to talk about why staging is important as well and what are the benefits of staging a home. You also might need to do an open house for that property. Now, again, you might be able to job that out to somebody, make sure you understand the agreements and the contracts that you're writing. But you do have an obligation to that seller in order to help that seller sell their home for the highest amount of money in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of headaches. And that's your obligations through the seller side of things. Now, I want you to also understand there might be people that are listening to this that have different types of real estate that they're going to choose to sell. Now, if you're licensed in the province of Ontario, you can sell any type of real estate. You're licensed across Ontario. There's not a separate license for commercial, industrial, land, or residential. You can sell them all. However, if you're not a commercial real estate agent, you may want to partner with one or refer it out if you don't understand the rules and regulations that come with putting together a commercial deal. It is completely different from putting together a residential real estate deal. The same as an industrial deal is going to be different, and the same as a land deal is going to be different. For instance, a lot of people don't know that financing land is one of the hard things to do. So if someone's looking for a plot of land, they might have to have their cash up front versus being able to finance that property, just as a simple example. And how we navigate a residential purchase or sale is going to be completely different than how we handle a residential or a commercial lease or a commercial sale or a commercial purchase. The factors are different. So one of those simple examples is on a commercial sale, you might have to factor in environmental. What I mean by that is the property, let's say you're selling a gas station as an example. You're going to have someone come in. MTE is a great example of a company that does this, and they're going to do ground samples to tell you if the ground is contaminated or not. And we typically don't worry about that on the residential side, but you might have to worry about it on the commercial side of things. And then you get into industrial and you're looking at a whole other set of factors as well. So yes, there's some intermingling between these, but it's very important to know what type of real estate you're going to be selling and what your niche is going to be and what you're going to be focusing on. Do not try to do them all. It's very difficult to try to span across all of these. So make sure that you just stream yourself and decide what it is you want to focus on as you go through. Now, our next piece of that, we're going to talk about the basics of real estate selling. Looks like I've got a typo in there. I do apologize. So steps involved in the selling process. First one, obviously listing, marketing, negotiating, and then the closing process. And we talked about that briefly just on the last slide. But those steps, so the first one is you've got to list the home. Now, if you've never listed a home, there are some considerations to take into account here. You're going to be looking at a listing agreement. You're probably also going to be looking at a Form 244, which is seller direction on how they want you to handle the process. You're also going to have to share with them what your marketing strategy is going to look like. As a seller agent, you're probably going to have to do some negotiating. And then you're going to have to guide the seller all the way through to closing. You'll be working with their lawyer, their mortgage broker in that as well. So you want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what this process looks like. Now, I'm not going to dig into forms today. There's separate classes for that sort of stuff if you do want to take it, or you can plug into different webinars that go in depth into that. But you do need to have a basic understanding of what listing that home is going to look like. What are the paperwork that I need to go through? Or reach out to your broker of record in your office, or to your team leader to get some more information on that. And then, like I mentioned, marketing, negotiating, and closing. But let's talk about valuating a property. How do we determine the market of value for a property? Now, there are a number of different ways that you can look at this. The first one and the simplest one is to do a comparative market analysis. Now, you're going to say, well, what the hell is a comparative market analysis? And that's where we take homes that are similar to the home that we're about to list in the specific neighborhood, and we look at what they sold for, what they listed for. You might also factor in, especially the market we're coming out of, what price point did they put on it, and did it expire? Did they cancel the listing? Right? Now, in our organization, we do what's called a 5-5-5 rule when we're evaluating a property for price, where we take 5 active properties that are currently on the market. We partner it with 5 pending properties. So what did they sell for? And then we look at 5 expired or canceled listings and try to determine why those ones expired or were canceled. And through that process, we get to a point that we can give a range to the seller and have them make a decision on what we should price the home at. Now, notice you heard me say, I didn't price the home. I gave them the information and we came up to a price together. Now, that is important to remember when you're going through your property valuations, because if you say to someone, hey, your house is worth $800,000 and the market shifts and next week it's only worth $700,000, they're going to be very upset with you and they're going to want to blame you for that. So that's just one of the ways in which you can determine a property's valuation. Now, there are several others. Like if you're looking at the commercial side of things, there's also another one called the highest and best use. Now, you might have a property that you're selling that has a house on it even. Doesn't even have to be commercial. But the highest and best use is not to sell that home. The highest and best use may be to sell it for land value. Maybe the house is falling down. Maybe the next door neighbor has a $3 million monstrosity and the whole street's turning over. We see a lot of that happening in Toronto right now. So you might want to look at that valuation and you might determine it a little bit different because it might be only worth $600,000 or $700,000 if you're selling the house, but for land value, it might be worth 8 or 9 based on the houses around it. So you want to ensure that you are doing that effectively and you're understanding how to do that. Diana, for the 555, as we look through it, so I'm going to look at 5 active properties currently on the market. I'm going to look at 5 pendings or closed, and I'm going to include both. And I'm going to add in 5 expired or canceled listings. Now, one of the other ways, if you do get into trouble with a seller who's saying, you know what, I believe my house is worth more. Yeah, I hear what you said about the house down the road. Yes, I get that it looks just like mine. Yes, I understand that it has all the same features. However, I believe that mine is worth more. You're going to come across this where sellers are being unreasonable. I always say there's no such thing as a shortage of buyers. There's just a shortage of reasonable sellers. There's always enough buyers in the market to sell the homes that we have. So this is something you want to be in consideration of. So what a great way to do in that property valuation might actually be to take your seller out, drive the neighborhood, book them a few showings of properties in the price point that they want to be. So hypothetically, let's say you valued the house at 800,000 and they're saying, you know what, I think it's worth 950. Take them through a few homes that are worth 950 so that they can see the difference between both sides of it. You won't always have to do this. A lot of times, if you're following a great listing presentation, these are all parts of that listing presentation, and you'll be able to get them to a price. But again, you don't want to be the one setting the price. Always come up to a price together with the seller. That way, if you do have to do a reduction, you're not going to be the one that they point the finger at and said, you told me I could get 950 for my home. Now, then you want to make sure that you're prepping that property for sale. And that might include staging. Again, you're going to hear about staging. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Repairs or improvements to the home. Something as simple as painting a home can equal tens of thousands of dollars for your seller. Now, we as realtors and professionals, we have a fiduciary duty to have this conversation with them, but we also have a professional duty to make sure that they're going to get the highest for their home. And so painting is one of those simple things that you can do, refresh the property, makes everything look bright and wonderful again, and has the highest return on prepping a listing. A lot of people don't know that. But encourage your sellers to touch up the paint and to paint the home. Now, you might look at any major repairs. Maybe the baseboard's been chewed a little bit. Maybe they have a small dog. Maybe there's some nicks in the walls from the kids playing hockey. Who knows? But you want to make sure that when you put a house to market, that the house is in the best condition that you possibly can get it there so that you can get the highest value for that home. And then we'll talk on staging in a bit, but it is there. You may want to bring a stager in to that process for you as well. And that'll help you in order to get a sale quicker. And that's kind of the basics of that real estate selling. Again, I do apologize for that typo, but there's not a whole lot that goes into that. Now, I would encourage everyone in whatever market you're in to ensure that you're doing at least 1 weekend of open houses, if not 2, if you have the time. And the reason for that is when we talk about this part of real estate, you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to generate more business. Now, if we do our jobs correctly, every listing that we take has the potential to generate us 3 to 4 other pieces of business. Let me explain. So the first one is we have the opportunity to sell that home, which is awesome. No complaints there. Second is we might be buying for that seller. So they might need to buy a home. We always say list to last, and this is why. The third is you may do an open house and maybe a neighbor comes through who's thinking about selling, or maybe another prospect comes through who's thinking about buying. And they might not buy this home, but you've kept in touch with them and they decide to buy another home with you. Now, I always recommend marketing to the neighborhood, letting the neighbors know. And a lot of people don't understand why this is important. Well, here are a couple of stats for you to understand. The purchaser of a home is usually found within a 5 kilometer radius of that home. It's one of the stats. Maybe they're a move up, you're selling a single detached home and they're moving up from a semi or a townhouse and they want to stay in the neighborhood because of their kids. That's a great example of why someone would stay in a neighborhood. This happens all the time. So by marketing to the neighbors, whatever way you choose to do that, you now have an opportunity to capture that additional seller or buyer through that process as well. And then you may get a sign call, a realtor.ca lead. You might run an online ad through command for this as well, or whatever platform you decide to, and you might pick up an additional lead. Now, all of a sudden, you've turned one listing into 4 or 5 pieces of business. And when you're looking at the pros that are out there, when you're looking at the people that consistently seem to be selling houses, this is how they're thinking about every listing that they put on the market. When we list homes, it's an opportunity for us as realtors to generate more business. So do not leave all that goodwill on the table. Make sure that you have a system around that you're going to be following, and ensure that you're going to be putting the time into that listing, showing off that property so that other people want you to do the same thing for them as well. Awesome. So going into the next section, let's talk about marketing and why marketing is crucial to what we do. So looking at, and hopefully you guys can all see my screen properly. So marketing is what we call the big picture. Now you're marketing your brand and you're marketing your listing. Now, highly productive listing sales representatives know that they can do both at the same time. And it's one of the fundamental reasons why listings are so powerful. If you focus on marketing your sellers' listings, buyers will always come. Now, if you've ever listened to me speak before, you know I love the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, one of the greatest books in real estate. I think everybody should read it. But it does state that research shows that if your lead generation program consistently delivers you seller listings, you can count on marketing those listings and you will guarantee yourself buyer leads. Now, a lot of times you'll get asked the question, are you a listing sales rep or are you a marketing agent? And I hope that you all start thinking like a marketing agent. Now, every piece of marketing you create to market the property should have your brand, your slogan, your logo, and ensuring that you're following all of Rico's guidelines through that. Now, your marketing should consist of 5 parts: your marketing plan, your marketing message and method. You're going to manage a marketing budget. You're going to look at staging, and you're going to look at pricing through this as well. Now, you might say, well, what does pricing have to do with marketing? I'll share a story with you. So I listed a home once very early in my career, in my first year of real estate, and I didn't know anything about pricing. So I let the seller dictate to me what I should price the home at. I didn't know that I had the power to tell them no. And so what ended up happening is that seller told me what number I was going to put on it. And I listened and I did it. Well, that listing sat and sat and sat. I did eventually get it sold somewhere in the 80-day market range. Yes, for those of you that are new to the industry, there was a time when it took over 75 to 100 days on average to sell a home. So you had to take a lot of listings and you had to have a big budget in order to sit on those listings. However, that listing sat and it sat and it sat. And I kept trying to get price reductions, didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the right scripts and I wasn't training on any of this stuff. Remember, that's part of your job, scripting and role play, understanding what to say to people. And so I went out door knocking because I thought, maybe somebody else in the neighborhood would want to buy this home or know someone who wanted to buy the home. I knocked on this gentleman's door. He opened the door and I said, hey, I've got this house listed around the corner. Do you know anyone looking to buy it? Or are you thinking of selling yourself? And he said, you know what? I am thinking of selling, but I'd never use you. I was deeply hurt, deeply offended. I was like, what did I do? What did I do to you why you would never use me? And he said, well, that house has been sitting for a really long time. It's overpriced and clearly you don't know what you're doing. It was one of the first lessons I had in this industry that taught me why pricing and effective marketing was important. Hopefully you get ahead of that. You can learn from my mistakes and you don't have to feel that pain. However, the reality was he was right. Because once I got it to a price that it would sell at, it was wonderful and it sold right away. We had buyers coming back to the open houses. Because again, if a buyer thinks your property is overpriced, they're not going to come and visit you at your open house. So keep this in mind on pricing as you go through. Now, there's some stuff out there that you can take. So if you go into Connect, if you're with Keller Williams, there's our platform. You can go into Connect and you can look for what's called a 14-step marketing plan. Really simple. It's also in your MREA book. So go get one if you don't have one. And it gives you the 14 steps that you can share with your seller on how to do that. Now, as you're thinking about marketing, you want to make sure that you're thinking about two things: your message and your method. Now, what I mean by that is highly productive sales reps know that marketing has those two main components. So that your messaging is going to be what you say, and your method is going to be where you say it. Now, the message you put out to attract prospective buyers and sellers is everything. Why would they want to contact you in this market? What do they get if they do? These are the two questions that you want to ask yourself, and they're at the heart of every effective messaging and marketing campaign. So I want you to think, what are some other creative, exciting, and effective messages and methods of marketing that you've seen out there for listings? You don't have to share. We'll open it up at the end for Q&A. But start writing some of this stuff down. Now, the third thing I mentioned was managing that marketing budget. So you want to make sure you're holding that marketing accountable. Again, top sales rep test and track different methods of effectiveness, and then they commit to that message and method that's most effective and worth their time and money spent. Now, when you find a strategy that really works for you, you want to make sure that you use it consistently and continue to check it for effectiveness. Leveraging that accountability and consistency will maximize your return on this strategy. To avoid the pitfall, you want to make sure that you avoid spending time and money on things that aren't tracked or that you can't track. As an example, if I were to drop a flyer into an entire neighborhood once, I don't have a way to track that to tell me what it did, if it even did anything. So if you're going to commit to something like that, like a mail out budget, understand and know that you're committing to a 12 to 24 month campaign. And if you don't have the budget for it, don't do it, because you're going to waste your money and you're going to waste your time. So as important as it is for finding out what works for you in your business, it's just as important to find what doesn't work for you. So make sure that you understand that and network with other realtors, asking them what's working. Now we talk about the servicing of that as leads come through, and we're going to touch base on staging for a second. Now, the reason we talk about staging is homes that are in the best condition and priced properly sell faster than homes that are not. And ultimately, when I started this, I mentioned that your seller wants you to sell the home for the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of problems. That's all they want. Now, most homeowners know that it's important to keep the home bright, clean, free from clutter while it's on the market for sales. But sometimes just taking that little extra step to stage it can make the difference in how a buyer values it. It also might differ on the price the seller might get, and then that time it's going to take on market. So one of the things we tell our sellers is when your home doesn't feel like your home anymore, you've probably hit the mark. And what I mean by that is when a buyer walks into a home and they're looking to purchase that home, they need to visually be able to picture their stuff in the home. Now, if it's cluttered, you got a ton of stuff everywhere, their brain doesn't have that ability. They're going to be focused on the home or what's wrong with the home. They're not going to be focused on putting their stuff in the home. And this is where having a stager come in can be great for you. Now, goal of staging, you want to present that best face for the home. You want to maximize the spaciousness of the home, because one of the things that staging is going to do is going to be decluttering. I mentioned you want to allow visiting buyers to envision themselves in the home instead of seeing it as the seller's home, not their home. Now, realtors who work with buyers are willing to offer more money, and this is why staging is such an important thing, even at the worst, if you just bring in a stager for a consult. Now, 32% of realtors reported a 1 to 5% increase in what they receive for their sellers just by staging homes. Here's where it gets really interesting. 16% reported a 6 to 10% increase. A 6 to 10% increase was reported by 16% of the realtors out there. And this is one of my favorite ones. 3 to 5% of those realtors reported an 11 to 15% increase in what they received in offers. So put that in a perspective. You ever see two homes listed on the same street? One gets this high number and the other one doesn't. Look at the condition of that home. I'm going to bet a stager was in there. So you want to ensure that you are looking at staging the properties in which you're a part of. You have the opportunity, and not everybody's going to get it, but when you're having this conversation with your sellers, those simple statistics could help, where you might be able to say to them, hey, you have a 32% of realtors reported a 5% increase in what they got for the home. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars for your seller. What it's also going to do is it's also going to take out the commission argument out of the conversation, because if they're making 5 to 10% more, they're probably willing to pay your commission through that. Just keep that in mind. And the average staging consult is, somewhere in $600 to $500. And that stager can also be the person that delivers the bad news to the seller. So again, I got an example of this. I had a home that we were listing, and no matter what I said, they wouldn't really listen to me. And one of the things I noticed in the home is they had a really small dog, and that home smelled. They couldn't smell it. Every time I asked them, they told me I was crazy. There was no smell. However, I knew there was a smell. I just couldn't get them to hear it. And I said, well, why don't I bring out my stager, and she can just look around the home. She can give you some ideas, some paint colors, that sort of stuff. So my stager goes in and she notices exactly what I noticed. And she was able to say to them, hey, I don't want to offend you, but I'm giving you this from a third-party source. Your home smells, and we got to do something about it. And so she was able to get them to steam clean everything. And actually, we were able to get them to take the dog to their parents for a week while we had the house listed. And we were able to get them top dollar. Now, what's interesting about this is the home had been listing prior with another realtor who couldn't get it sold. So there are some importance around staging where you can get a lot more money for your sellers, as well as a benefit for them as well. And so the last thing I want to talk about in that is the servicing and marketing cost of a listing that doesn't sell. Now, a lot of people don't think about this, but understanding what that could do to you is wildly important. Now, the first thing is going to be your marketing dollars. Now, every listing has a cost. It's not just your time. You're going to have to put money into that listing. You've got photography, potentially staging, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you're on a team or you are building a team or any version of that, even yourself, you're going to have servicing time. You're going to have hours into the property, including travel, depending on where the listing is. You might also have some CRM fees, some ads you've ran, et cetera, et cetera. But the most important thing is going to be your reputation. You heard about that story earlier. Now you might get a negative Google review. And if you don't think your clients are Googling you, think again. But every time a listing doesn't sell because you didn't price it properly, market it properly, or stage it properly, that's going to hurt your reputation. And you'll lose listings where they'll say, I just went with someone more experienced because they have a better reputation. So it's just something to consider as you go through this, and understanding that pricing is a process. So learning how to do it well and what pricing strategy. So I've given you one. That was the easy part. But there's also, understanding what the seller and you can and can't control. So there are going to be factors in pricing that you can't control. As an example, and we see this happening a lot around town right now, what happens if you've got a home that you're going to be listing and then a notice comes out that they're going to put up a multifamily unit right behind that home? That's going to change how you want to price that property. It's just something to be aware of as you go through this process, because there are things you just can't control and you've got to sell that home anyway. All right. So we can control there's 3 things that kind of go into the property when we're selling it: price, location, and condition. Well, I can't control the location, but I can control the price and I can control the condition. And that's all we've been talking about today on doing that. Now, the third thing is you want to understand the window of opportunity. And what I mean by that is those days on market to sell. Now, the best chance to sell a home is when it first hits the market. Please know and understand that. That is true. It's always been true. In my 15 years, it's always been true. But your sellers need to be clear on this, that there's a window of opportunity that open and closes just as quickly as it does. And the first few weeks are what we call make or break time for listings. So if you're not prepared for that and your seller's not going to price it properly, you are going to miss that window of opportunity. Now, on the other side of that window, it's not that it's not going to sell. It's just once you get over sort of that 14 to 21 days on market, every week, every day means your seller could potentially get a lower offer. Again, we talked about this at the start. You want to make sure that you're pricing to reflect the market movement. So if the market's appreciating or depreciating, that's something you need to know. How quickly are the prices changing? What's the rate at which they're changing? At one point last year, we saw prices change almost in a weekend by 10%. So if you were pricing it, and we had this happen within our organization, where you price a home at 800 today, and in 2 days it was worth 750 because the market was moving down that quickly. And so that leads to the fifth point, which is don't chase the market price ahead of it. And so we implemented that right away. We could forecast where prices were going, and we ensured that we made sure our sellers were pricing them instead of where they thought. So that's where marketing is crucial in real estate. Pricing is a part of your marketing strategy. And then let's talk about some of those traditional marketing methods. So flyers, direct mail, and open houses. Yes, these all still work, despite what you think. They just take a bigger commitment. So flyers, as an example, you heard me talk about that. That's something that you got to commit to for a really long time. Same with direct mail. Now, direct mail might be a little bit different, where you might be sending a newsletter to someone directly in the mail. Maybe it's a CMA that you send them every month, every quarter. And in open houses, that does fall into the traditional way of doing things. So you're going to sit in an open house every weekend. But again, remember, you can tweak it. So if you were part of any of the other open house courses that are out there, you'll hear people do open houses on a Wednesday afternoon from 3 to 5. Now they'll target outside of a school to get that drive-by traffic. They'll do that on Wednesday, again on Thursday, and then again on Saturday. But it's creating a cadence there where now the neighbors and all the people picking up their kids are seeing, hey, this house is on the market. Maybe I'll pop in and look at that open house. And then we get into the digital marketing basics, which is your website, social media, and email marketing. Now, your website, please ensure that your website has an IDX feed. If it doesn't, it's probably not effectively going to generate you business. It's probably not also going to effectively allow you to market the properties you list. Now, you're going to show up on all the national places regardless, as long as you've signed up for the IDX feed on your listing. Some realtors choose not to. I think that's a disservice to their clients. Now, keep in mind, that's just an opinion. I just believe it's a disservice because if they're not looking at my website, but they're looking at somebody else's website, and my client's home gets to get showcased there, and I get to showcase a great property, that's going to be in the benefit of my seller. So you want to make sure that you've got a great website. You also want to ensure that your website has a call to action. I cannot stress this enough. We do have a section later in this webinar series that we're going to be doing that does have a deeper dive into websites and social media marketing. So stay tuned for that. But you want to ensure that your website has a call to action so that you can capture information of prospective buyers and sellers when they come to your website. You also want to make sure that your website has an opportunity for you to showcase featured listings. This is going to be important. You also want to make sure that you've got some SEO. Maybe it's a blog that you're choosing to write. Again, if you've taken AI or any AI classes, that's going to be important for you to know how to do that as well. You can get blogs up very quickly. But SEO is very important for Google and for any other search engine. But we really only focus on Google because they're the most important one to ensure that you get that information out there. If you've got great marketing, you've got great stuff on your website, Google will rank you higher and push that information out for you. Now, the second piece of that is your social media. Now, you hear a lot of people say you can do all your business on social media, and there are people that are going to tell you you can't do business on social media. Again, I think it just determines the commitment you have to your marketing campaign and what's the product that you're going to put out there. You can also sponsor ads on social media, highlighting your listings for your sellers. And there are so many different things that you can do on social media in order to effectively market the home. What I will say is don't be a traditional realtor and just post, just listed, and just sold on your social media. Google doesn't like it. Instagram, Facebook don't like it. The algorithms don't like it. But more importantly, your clients don't like it. They tune it out. They ignore that information. It's part of our job to list and sell houses. So yes, you can have that stuff on there. However, you need to include video. You need to include some of the stuff that's important on there. And you need to make sure that you're getting effective marketing on your social media campaigns. Again, if you're not using video to market your listings, you are doing a disservice to your clients. Spend a little bit extra and get that as well. Just spend that little bit more to go from just a photo package in order to go to a video package. Now, in that video package, depending on who you're using, you may want to highlight yourself in that as well. And that happens all the time. You see that out there all the time. And then you're going to leverage that on your social media to generate more business. Now, you might ask, why is it important to generate on social media? More than likely, your followers are going to be part of your database and your sphere. These are people who know, like, and trust you. That's why they're following you. It's not going to be all the other realtors. And yes, there's a point for them too. But you're also showcasing properties out there that ensure other people are seeing it, potential buyers are seeing it, and now you can market on a grander scale by using social media. The other side of it is you might have realtors who follow you who maybe haven't seen the listing hit the market yet. And now they can see your showcasing of the property on your social media, and they may have a buyer for it. Now they reach out to you, you get another sale done. And then lastly, email marketing. Again, some people believe this is dead, but it is still proven as a part of a marketing strategy that you are sending that out to your database, maybe to other realtors with their permission, inside and outside of your local real estate market. So email marketing is very, very, very important as well. So just something to consider as you're going through this and making sure that you have all the pieces of the puzzle for a great marketing campaign. Like I mentioned, grab your MREA, page 159, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but it is in there and you can get that. So marketing is very, very crucial. We talk about prospecting based versus marketing enhanced. So you're going to have both sides of it, but it's important to market your listing. That's part of our job, is to be a marketing agent as well. Now we are coming to time, so I want to thank you for coming. And then I want to open it up to a Q&A session. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I've got a number of you that are still here. Feel free to raise your hand and I will allow you the opportunity to unmute as well. But let's make this a dialogue. What are some other things that you are wondering about in this process? Mustafa, awesome. Where did you go? Bear with me here. There we go. All right, Mustafa, you should be able to unmute and you should be able to chat.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much. This is very, very helpful. Some of it I knew before, quite a bit of it I didn't. But even the things I knew, they just helped put them in perspective. I appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I have a zillion questions, but let me just stick to one for the time being. I might email you with some others. Staging. I'm thinking of presenting myself as a stager as well. I see giving myself more value, telling the client I actually know how to give the staging consultation. Save them that fee, and also showing them that I know what I'm talking about. I don't need somebody else to help me with that. Is that a good idea, in your opinion? Although I'm kind of fixated on it. B, is there a credential that I can obtain for that? Thank you.
Yeah, so great questions. Absolutely. So if we check with the board, there is a course there that's a certified staging course. You can get that. I don't think everybody needs it, but if you are going to present it that way, you do have that opportunity to become a certified stager through the board. And yes, it's a great opportunity that you have to increase your value to your sellers. Now, it's not right for everyone. Some people choose not to. I choose not to, because I want to stay streamlined in what I do for my sellers. That's not my job. I want to make sure that I job it out to somebody who focuses on staging all the time. However, there's nothing wrong with being the person that says, you know what, I'm going to offer that as part of my value proposition to my sellers, and I'm going to be able to come in and stage for them as well. So nothing wrong with that. Tons of great courses out there. The board does have, you can reach out to the board. They do have ability for you to do that as well. I don't think it's a good or a bad idea. I think just making sure that you are clear about what the value you're bringing to the table for, and understanding that once you take that listing, it's going to be the same thing for you. That's just more time spent in that listing. So I would maybe look at that and say, you know what, if I'm going to include my staging, I'm not going to negotiate my commission, and I want to get paid a fair commission, which you're entitled to set for yourself through that process. That makes
Great.
sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, I'm here for the next 5 minutes. I'm just going to leave it open, leave the chat open. Feel free to reach out here. If you do want to ask me something else, guys, add me on Instagram if you have me there. It's at Andre Chin KW. Feel free to add me to Instagram, shoot me a DM there. I'm happy to answer anything and reach out to you. So happy to chat about it. But if there are no more questions, I'm just going to sit here for a bit and wait for you guys. If not, thank you. This was the intro. Again, it's our intro course. It's not our advanced course. It's our intro into the basics of real estate selling. So I'm glad you guys were all here to take it. And kind of like Mustafa said, he was able to learn stuff, get a reminder on stuff he'd already know, and add things to his repertoire as well. So thank you all for being here.